thank you so much for showing up here tonight, because we do need your input. John?
Thank you, Arden. Welcome, as Arden said. As I said previously, the presentation that you're going to see tonight and that will be recorded and available online, if you raise your hand to ask a question, and if that question be on the specific element that we're talking about. If you're asking questions on other things, it's probably something we're going to cover later on anyway. So ask a question for clarity on the slide we're on. That makes things a lot easier. Yes, ma'am.
Who are you and who is this gentleman?
I am going to get to that right now. So that gentleman was Arden Wallam. He is the general manager of Mission Springs Water District and has been for about 13 years. So my name is John Soulier. I'm the public affairs officer and the project manager. I've been with the district since 1994, and this is the 5th assessment district proceeding that I've been involved in or been the project manager on. Arturo Ceja is our county manager. He is here. We have him here in case there is a need for Spanish interpretation. Is there a need for Spanish interpretation in the room, or are we good? So Arturo, you can hang out and be totally entertained, or you go home and have your life. CV Strategies is a firm we worked with on the last 3 projects. Tara and Brandon are here helping us film this, and they do a lot of assistance for us on public outreach and education. So here's the overview of what we're going to talk about a little bit. Just quickly on who is Mission Springs Water District. Tara, you probably give up your chair at this point. Tara, you probably give up your chair too.
It's okay, we can do it.
Just briefly about who we are, and most of these sections are brief, so don't get overwhelmed by the content here. We will talk about what an assessment district is, and frankly what a grant is. What does that mean to you? What is our role throughout this process as an agency? Very important to you. You need to know our limitations and what our mission is. Why we're proposing this project at this particular time. We'll go over the project areas with you, look at the maps. We'll talk about cost considerations, obviously the #1 issue, but we'll get to that. You need to build up to it so you understand everything surrounding that. We'll review the ballot and how that all works, the process, the timeline, the board action. And then we'll take any questions that were not answered at that point. All of this information will be available on the website as well as we move forward. And after April 1st, this video will be, if you want to go back and don't remember something or need a refresher, or frankly, I'll have contact information and you can call me or my assistant. I have a card here as well. If you want to take one on the way out, that's fine. So what we do, so Mission Springs Water District was established in 1953 by people that lived in this community. It was before the city was incorporated. It was 1 square mile of land. There were 2 private water companies. They were consolidated and purchased by the community. A vote of 249 to 9, I believe, to form this agency. Back then it was Desert Hot Springs County Water District. And we changed that in the 80s to become Mission Springs Water District. Right now we are over 135 square miles. And we go all the way to Cabazon Indian Reservation. We come up to the border of Sky Valley. We pick up a little bit of Palm Springs at I-10 Indian and all of Desert Hot Springs and some of the county areas around. So it's quite a bit larger than it was at that time. And we protect your award-winning water. This is one of our main mandates. One of the reasons we're talking to you, one of the reasons we continually are out looking for funding to make sewers affordable, because we need to protect the groundwater, and that's one of our major mandates. We also treat wastewater. We're a water and a sewer agency. We have a treatment plant, 2 actually, a very small one near Sky Valley, and the other one is near the Little League Fields. In fact, the Little League Fields to the south, that's our property down there that we lease to the city for $1 a year so they can have Little League and have the kids able to play. But right on the other side of the fence, if you hit a home run, don't go get it. So we treat it in an environmentally sound manner. That means, you know, it's not a septic tank. It's within compliance. And down the road, we're even looking at reuse opportunities to help us balance our water supplies up here. And we help conserve. If you've lived here any amount of time at all, you've probably heard from me in one form or another about using less water conservation. And by the way, this service area, our service area of the 5 public agencies in the valley, We are almost number one in water conservation, and our per capita water usage is very low. So that's something the community should be proud of. So let's talk about what an assessment district is. So basically it's a tool, and it's a financing tool. So what it does, it makes large priced or high priced items possible to purchase by a large group of people. And it's a guarantee against the loan. So an assessment district, if it's passed, it's all by the vote of the people, purely. You're in charge of everything. We cannot force this upon you. This is your call. And a financing district, assessment district, it's required to have a nexus of benefit to your property. So I can't build sewer to one property and have it nowhere near another and charge the person that's nowhere near. It has to benefit your property, which is why you would receive a ballot to vote on it. And it does guarantee against your property, that assessment, that it will be paid back over the terms, 20, 30 years, whatever the case. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. It's a method of dividing the cost of these public infrastructure projects between a lot of people. So it's spread evenly based on benefit. Everybody gets the same benefit. It's the same assessment to your property. If someone gets more benefit, for instance, if you happen to own a triplex instead of a single-family dwelling, you'll pay a little more because there's more benefit because you have more use on that property with that system. And that's what I was just talking about. The cost is proportional. Some commercial properties will probably pay a little more because there's more use for their benefit to their commercial property than a single-family residential. And in fact, in this proposal, you're going to find that an improved property costs a little bit more than an unimproved property where there's no structure. So what's a grant? Well, this is the good stuff. This is what I've been working on since 1995, finding funding to make infrastructure affordable to the residents and citizens, our customers up here in the Desert Hot Springs, greater Desert Hot Springs area. It's outside funding, first of all. It comes from other sources. Mainly for us, it's state and federal sources. We've been extremely successful. We've probably captured in the last 15 years nearly $30 million in grant funding. Think about it, for a community of 40,000 people. That's pretty darn good. It's applied to reduce the cost of the entire project. Now, I received a few calls, and the person on the phone said, well, how do I apply for that grant? Well, you don't need to apply for the grant individually. The grants that we are after are applied to the entire project, and we'll show you the numbers later, to reduce the cost for everybody. So you don't have to do any legwork on grants. It's all done by us to reduce the total cost. Here's the good part, right? It's not paid back by you. Now, one gentleman on the phone today asked, well, don't my taxes pay for a grant? Well, yes, but the small amount of taxes that come from this area have are a small portion of the millions that we're getting. So we're not paying millions and millions of dollars of taxes from here. But when we get these grants, we win from taxes that are paid all over the country or all over the state, or through the propositions that you've all passed in times past, the water bonds, etc. Those are the areas we get these grants from. So what's our role as a water agency? We're very restricted, actually. We can only do so much. We do need to plan and facilitate the ballot process. That's all up to us. There's a lot of administration and process that goes along with that to make sure it's done in accordance with state law. Lots of laws surround the way this has to happen, and we have to stay right in the middle of it. In fact, throughout this process, we have to hire what we call bond counsel, which is an attorney. He oversees everything to make sure that we're marching right in line with what state law requires under Proposition 218. Anybody remember Proposition 218? You passed it in 1996, and it changed the way that these types of things are formed. It was called the Right to Vote on Taxes Act. And that's why you get a right to vote on this. We can't build it and say, welcome to the family. Yes, sir?
On the ballot process, is it going to be for our district only, or is the whole city going to vote on it?
So the question is, on the ballot process, is it for our district only or for the whole city? The ballot process in this particular case are only for the properties that will benefit from the project. So it's only the Assessment District 18 area, which I'll show you later. Most of the city, in fact, all of the rest of the city has already been
converted.
well, I wouldn't say converted, but sewer has been constructed to their properties. So from past assessment districts. Yes, ma'am?
Didn't we already vote to increase our taxes for the sewers a few years ago?
Great question. So in 2004, every area that we're talking about tonight, you did vote to do this very same thing, to create seed money so that we could go out and say, look, the community's kicked in, Mr. or Madam Grant person, now you need to help us out. Well, what happens is that seed money is put down. You don't pay anything unless we actually build a project and we go out with it. But there's only a 10-year window. So in 2004, that was voted in. I voted for that as well. But in 2014, the areas that we weren't able to get grants for many reasons, lots of change, it expired. So right now, there is no assessment sitting on any of your properties for wastewater, for sewer. That's what happened. Good question? Yes, ma'am.
I received a little card about this meeting in the mail. I'm
Yes.
the only person in our little cul-de-sac of 6 that did, so I'm just wondering, when the ballots go out, will it be a little more comprehensive of a mailing? Which is-
Yes. So the question is, she received the notification, and she's the only one in her cul-de-sac that did. So what we'll do is, after the meeting, I'll get with you, we'll get information on that. Some of your areas, some of your corner properties may abut an existing sewer, so they're already hooked up. Or we find that the county database isn't always perfectly up to date. I got a call today from someone, in fact, that said, my neighbors got it, what about me? We found out that the county gave us a mailing address that was 6 years old. But we're required to use the county database as the foundational mailing list. And so through the process, if we need to correct that, input like that is very important. So if you don't mind, we'll get that information after the meeting.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
My neighbor across the street didn't get this letter, so.
Same situation.
Yeah.
So after we're done, if you don't mind, give me your address or your street number, and we'll check on that. All right, so we plan to facilitate the ballot process. We are to provide factual information about the project to property owners. We can't be biased, and we can't be out there, selling it like a used car. No offense if you're a used car salesperson. But we have to provide factual, unbiased information to you. We provide information materials to the community for distribution as well. So if you say, I would like something, my neighbor, more information, et cetera, we can help you with that. In this day and age, though, that's almost obsolete. It's www.mswd.org/ADAT. Really, hand it over, right? That's the way it works.
Can people vote online?
That's a good question. We asked that of our attorney, not yet. California won't accept that yet, although there can be email ballots where you can print the ballot, wet signature, scan that ballot in, and email it back to us. If we get to that balloting stage, this is not the balloting stage by any means. If we get there, we'll explain all that. Because there's a lot of snowbirds, and we don't want to miss them, and they were actually already telling us, we want to be able to sound off on that, and Canadian mail is slow. That's what I hear. Yes, ma'am.
Will it just be registered voters or all property owners?
Now we'll get to that too, but the question was, will it be registered voters or property owners? This only affects property owners because you're the only ones legally empowered to place any sort of financial burden on your property. Nobody else could do that. You can't do that. Nobody else could do that. The legal owner or an executor or whatever the case. Okay, so what's the goal of our information that we're disseminating? And this is very important. We want to make sure that stakeholders have enough factual information to make an informed decision. Often these things happen. There's not enough public outreach. The rumor mill starts, oh yay, oh nay, oh whatever. And people don't have the tools and they're not empowered to really know what the ramifications are. Well, that's what we are. We are the official source of information. Period. Nobody else. We're it. And we have to be forthright and factual. So what we can't do, well, we can't campaign. This is why we are that ultimate source of information. We're not allowed to campaign. We can't push a thumbs up or thumbs down. Now, our board can take action and pass a resolution that says, we believe this is important for groundwater protection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I can't spend ratepayers' money and hire a big slick firm to do a big ad spread on, one-sided. It has to be unbiased. By the way, sometimes the facts seem biased, but we're just sharing the facts, and they point to different outcomes. So, a lot of people, well, why are you doing this now? In fact, that question came a little bit before the meeting. Well, here's one reason. Since 1972, this district got into the sewer business way back then. There were septic tank problems all over the place in the old, what we used to call the cabin sites, which are the homes right around our office. And they got in that business, and they went to the USDA and got funded and built a wastewater treatment plant, went out and started abating those systems. Well, later on, we began to look at groundwater quality and the impact as development came, more and more homes, more and more septic tanks, all of it percolating down towards either the spa water or the drinking water. The other thing is, right now, modern wastewater treatment is environmentally sustainable. It's important. We treat that water to state standards, and when it's discharged back in the environment, it's for beneficial uses, and in the future, reuse to bring balance to our bottom line water demands here. Yes, sir.
I would counter that all that wastewater is not percolating down to the our quality of drinking water, because last year at this meeting you told me that 80% of the city's already been converted. So if 80% of the city is already on sewer and only 20% of the city is still on septic tank, how could all that septic water percolate down to the groundwater when there's only 20% left on on septic?
Okay, so the comment was that there's only a smaller percentage of septic
20%.
tanks left in the region, and how can that impact the groundwater? Well, it's about the densities. And so what the Regional Water Quality Control Board does, which is an agency of the state that monitors groundwater discharge, they look at septic tanks per acre, and they see densities where you have neighborhoods. And what you'll see in the map later on, for instance, you have Mission Lakes Country Club up there, a few thousand homes, all combined, all of them percolating wastewater through their septic systems at one time. It's at the top of the watershed. That's what we're concerned about. That's what the regional board's concerned about. It's not that these down here. Now, does that reduce the possibility of groundwater problems? Yes, it does. But as long as there are high densities of homes, it could be a problem. In so much as in 1998, we went to the state of California and we got a law passed that restricted new development from building more than one home per half acre if there's no sewer available. So all these new developments out here to the west, we required them to build sewer lines and make sure that they're not starting the whole process all over again with septic tanks. See, failing septic tanks, anybody ever experienced failing septic tank?
I have one right now.
Oh, it's some nasty stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's a health problem. But septic tanks that work well, that's going down towards the groundwater. That's another problem. So both are a problem. If you're failing, you got a problem and a pretty good expense. And if they're not failing, working properly, they're percolating water down through the alluvium, down towards groundwater, whether it's the spa water or the drinking water. Another reason for now, and we'll talk about two of these in detail anyway, is there's funding available on the grant side of the equation. And I'll talk to you about that money. The other thing is there are septic failures. Over the last year and a half, I've gotten quite a few calls, especially in the Highlands area. Septic tank failing, when are you coming, when are you coming? So this is still happening, and the investment, the cost of this has inflated, just like the cost of sewers, period. Everything's inflated. The cost of remediating failing septic tanks is inflated as well. It's extremely costly and is a problem. Yes, sir?
Did the funding increase over last year from the California grants?
There
Or is
is.
there more grant money than there was last year?
So the question is, there more grant available than last year? Yes. There's a higher ratio. I think we were talking to you guys about 57% of you pay and the rest comes from the state. It's a little better and a little bit more assured, which is really good. So the other one is customer feedback. There's a lot of customers just saying, look, we moved here from another area. We've never even heard, what is a septic tank thing? We would like to see modern sewers in our area. It's good for the property, it's good for the environment, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so I just wanted to show these two documents. We went back in 1996 and we had a couple of reports done. One of them addresses how water flows through the type of soils we have up here. And the other one was specific from USGS, from the Department of the Interior, specifically to high density of septic tank. And that's part of what launched our program for us to get very serious and for the board to get very serious. In fact, my kind of christening in this business was because of these two reports. We had to get aggressive with communicating to the community how important it was to figure out and answer the sewer problem. And I gotta tell you, one of the first assessment districts we went to form back then, with no grant money at all, was only $6,800 per parcel. And they said no. And I was visiting with them about a month ago, and they were angry at each other for saying no, because the inflation has made it so even half of that is more than it was then. So you can see what happens. But those are the reports that really kicked it off. It's been a community-wide solution. I mentioned this earlier, since 1972 when we built that treatment plant down there. Preventing groundwater, I think Mr. Wallen mentioned that before he left, is 10 to 100 times less costly than having to treat it if it gets polluted. The high desert is a big example of that. They had pollution problems up there because they had all these septic tanks up in the Yucca area. They began to import water. Water levels came up. It met the septic going down, and all of a sudden they started having water quality problems. Very costly to remediate, and now they're in the $200 million bracket for building an entire new wastewater system up there, including a treatment plant. So it's a very difficult thing. We have employees that live up there. Very, very expensive. I live now, I lived here for 20 years, I lived in Cedar City, $20,000 per parcel in Cedar City. So it can get quite expensive. We're doing a lot better here. Yes, ma'am?
And you brought up cost.
Yes.
What cost are we talking about?
I'm going to show you the whole thing.
I know, but I have to leave. And
I'm going to get you a question. How long do you have? You have 10 minutes?
yeah, probably.
Okay.
But is there an extra cost then to hook your house up?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's a lot of questions about costs, and we'll get to, and we explain all costs. Replacing local systems with centralized sewer, that's part of our solution. Using outside funding to make sure that costs are as low as possible and low interest. We have as a public agency access to some of the lowest interest money that's available anywhere because we get it through what's called the state revolving fund. And that money is extremely inexpensive, nothing like what anybody can get from a bank. Even right now in this climate where interest rates are still reasonably low. And we have to partner with you though. Without you, we don't move forward. It's your call, it's your community, it's your investment, it's your home, it's your groundwater. All right, so let's move on. Funding availability. So this is a critical driver. Grants and low interest mean this is the cheapest this is ever going to be. It's not going to get cheaper, and we're not going to probably never get more than 50% off the cost.
Is it cheaper than last year?
I think it's probably pretty close at the end of the day. And actually, it's again, the inflation factor has even come up since a year ago.
Last year it was almost $8,000 for the pipe in the street, and then it was another $2,500 to $3,000 to hook up from the street to the house. So I was looking at almost $12,000 over. Well, I could put $8,000 of it on a 25-year loan, okay, and then the hookup fee I'd have to come out of pocket, so that would be the $3,000 out of pocket. So I was hoping you could get more California grants this year so that you could bring down, you know, the $7,800 that we were going to pay for the main pipe that goes in the street.
Yeah.
If you could bring that cost down a little bit, it sure would, it would help us a lot.
No, I agree. And we're doing what we can. We have a couple of angles on that that may help even more than what we have now. These are preliminary numbers. So again, the questions are, a lot of questions on cost. I promise you we have plenty of slides on cost to put you to sleep. So the funds are right now available through California Prop 1, which was the last water bond that was passed. And they are first come, first served. We mentioned that in your flyer. It's not first come, first served to you as individuals. It's first come, first served to the agency. And we're going after those aggressively right now. In fact, right now, we have in hand a Prop 1 grant that's going to do some of the design engineering work in some of the areas we're talking about tonight that haven't had that design work. That's going to reduce the cost. So there's still some reductions in cost for this overall project that we're working on that are not quite in the bag. Yes, sir.
6 to 8 years ago, we attended a meeting and I asked John Furby if all the plans for the city have been drawn up. Then I went next door to the mobile trailer where the guy who's in charge of the plans, his office was, and he said there was not even plans to make plans.
I'm not sure who said that, but we've had.
No, he had all the documents and blueprints.
Sure. So the question is there design? Most of the wastewater system are master planned, and the design, which is much more detailed, which is actually where the line's going to be, the depths of those lines, how many feet, et cetera, et cetera. Preliminary project work has been done, and now the actual engineering, we're working in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers to actually do it. So that's being done now. We have one grant in the hamper, we have another one in the queue for design work for areas both in the Highlands and Mission Lakes Country Club. So what we're trying to accomplish is to knock out all those costs of design work, which are significant when you look at the whole project, they're in the millions, and reduce those significantly with those grants, and then get the construction grants. So there's money moving in, and it's very strategic how we're approaching it. But the way we're approaching it, we think is going to drive the cost as low as possible.
Is the, not to interrupt, but
Yes, sir.
Mission Lakes and the Highlands, so is it going to be a vote by both districts, or is each district going to vote separately?
It's all one district in this case, which include Mission Lakes and the Highlands and some areas in between. We'll show you a map in a moment.
Okay.
So the question had to do with the vote, who's voting, and is it broken up by areas?
John, every time we go into a new part of the city to convert septic to sewer, because I know they've done 80% of the city, but every time you go into a new assessment district to do a conversion of septic tanks, you have to do a whole new design. You have to go. What I'm asking is, why couldn't you guys have already used the designs that you've used in every segment of the city? Why do you have to pay? Why do you have to go to all this expense of doing another design
Sure.
when you've already done most of the city?
Okay, so the question is, it has to do with our design, and why, since we've designed it in one area of the city, why can't we apply that design to another? Well, that's because there's no street, there's no elevation, there's no topography that's the same. Every single foot of sewer line has to be designed specific to every single block throughout the city to make sure it flows correctly. There's a lot of standards and engineering standards that are required. If you ever build a sewer and it wasn't designed correctly and you got a little dip in it, what settles in the dip? We don't want to talk about too much around dinner hour. So federal funding authorization is active right now. We have federal funding that is active for our area and exclusive to our area. We worked for years with the federal government to get what's called a construction authorization through the Army Corps of Engineers, specifically for the Greater Desert Hot Springs region, to bring in funding to build sewers. Very important that we use that money, because if we don't continually go back to them, they'll take that off the books, which they have done for other areas in the past. Once the resources are gone, like this water bond, for instance, when that's used up, it's gone. So we want to strike while that money's being divvied out. Hey, Jerry Lewis, not the actor, but our old congressman said, look, I'm not a big guy on tax and spend, but if the rest of the country's being taxed and all this money's going somewhere, I want it to come in my district. I feel the same way. It's out there, somebody's going to use that money, why not us, right? Interest rates are still really low, guys, and we can still get pretty cheap money out there, especially through the state revolving fund. But again, the funding availability, community support is needed to match that money. If I don't have a match in hand, they don't even give you the second or the time of day. And we need to act soon because it is limited. And again, it's first come, first serve. We keep hammering that, but it's true. All right, let's go on. So here's your project area. So area A up there is Mission Lakes Country Club. The area D3, if you'll notice, D3, that's right there at Veterans Park. That's just a little piece of the previous assessment district that got left over. We built all the areas around this with previous grant funds. Yes?
It might be a good idea to be able to point to it because no one back here can see the areas. We can see the colors, but not really.
Can I walk over there to the, yeah, I can, okay. Everybody can see this monitor, okay? So yeah, Mission Lakes Country Club is right here. Now you'll notice everything that's not colored in is already sewered. So this is Mountain View Estates. When they built, that law that we passed was enacted. They had to bring sewers up from way over here, all the way up here and build all that as part of their infrastructure. There's a few sporadic homes along Little Morongo and Mission Lakes that are connected out their backside. Boy, that is really a bad way to talk about sewer. Poor choice of words, but entertaining nevertheless. This area is near Veterans Park, right at the top of Palm at Mission Lakes Boulevard. So just a small area left. In fact, this area in here was one of the last ones we built with some of the funding we have. Now you come over here and you're moving towards the Highlands. This is right at Pearson, right, this kind of chunk out here, that's the Mormon church right there, so that gives you perspective. Everything below that right here, near Cabot's Pueblo. And then up here, of course, is everything past Miracle Hill, the Highlands. Now it's so sporadic up here, the very last project we did under the previous assessment district, we completed about a year ago. The Army Corps of Engineers built it for us with grant funding, matching with the local match. Right here, we did that in here. So all of this will be taken care of. We met with a representative from the state board. They were out at Salton Sea a week ago, holding a meeting out of Sacramento out to the Salton Sea. And she said, I can't wait to see all those colors disappear, and that's the goal. So those are the areas that are affected. All of these areas will vote as one district. And then you get economies of scale for everybody, which makes everybody's price better. Yes, ma'am.
So I see these districts, does that mean, and these are all in this particular assessment district, or whatever it's called, would that mean that
Yes.
that's all of the rest of Desert Hot Springs and the people in the water?
So the question is, are all these combined? Is this the rest of Desert Hot Springs? Yes. Once these areas are done, the areas in the greater Desert Hot Springs region that have high densities of development are done. And then everybody that builds from now on, and all the future infill, you know, there's still a lot of vacant lots in some areas.
Right.
And they have to connect. Yes, sir.
On area H,
Yes.
is that over here by Hacienda in Quando Way area?
So the question is about the green area H. Let me move this. So area H, this is Miracle Hill right here, south of Hacienda. So you have Miracle Hill south, Two Bunches Resort is right here.
Okay.
So that's the area east of Miracle Hill, south of Hacienda, all the way over to Mountain View.
Okay.
So Quando and all that, yes.
Oh, okay.
To be exact.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How many systems would that represent total?
The question is, how many systems would that represent? Actually, when this is all done, it ties into one large system.
Well, I mean, how many houses that need
The houses. There's about 2,500 parcels involved in this particular project. All right. One point about property information. I've gotten a couple of calls, as I said, some of the county data is outdated. And I'm assuming all of you are here because you did get the flyer. But if you have neighbors, we would like them to contact us and give us the correct information. And this is, if you want to write this down, if you have a neighbor that didn't get something, the email to seymorin@mswd.org, very important.
What flyer are you talking about?
The one that came in the mail.
Okay, I got it. I just wanted to clarify it.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
seymorin@mswd.org. Sorry, ma'am, I didn't expect all the questions. I would have had you in 10 minutes. Yes.
You said, did you meet with someone at Mission Lakes?
Yes, we met with the Future Planning Committee about 2 weeks ago, just to give them an idea of what we were doing.
Okay, all right. 'Cause-
And then, of course, it goes from there. There's a whole
Yeah,
structure.
I understand that, but
I saw that.
my concern is that you're missing a lot of the snowbirds, because a great deal of snowbirds are out of there by April 15th.
Right, which is why we're doing this meeting to go, because what we will do is contact them, and that was brought up at the Future Planning Committee. So the question is, what about snowbirds? And it's not just there, there's other snowbirds that have second homes here. And so we are required to contact those property owners wherever their tax bill goes, this information is going. And the good thing is, with the video, they'll be able to log on, click through there, communicate with us, and make sure they're getting all their questions answered too, because it's very important to us as well. Yes, ma'am?
Me?
Did you have your hand up? thought
Yes, I
you
did.
Uh-huh.
I just wonder, is there the capacity at the treatment plant to add all of these parcels?
What a well-educated question. The question is, there a treatment plant capacity? So the answer is yes and no. If we were to bill you all today, the answer is no. But we're already in the next phase of our expansion right now. So there will be capacity. In fact, there's other grant money helping with that. Inevitably, we're moving at some point, the treatment plant that's here behind Mission Springs Park. All of that, the master plan from many years ago was going to be way down there at north of I-10 off Little Morongo Road, way down there away from civilization. So when we built that plant in 1972, it was in the middle of nowhere, now it's in the middle of somewhere. It is a problem. At some point we do need to move it. So there will be capacity by the time we build any of your areas.
And the current yearly rate with these changes going on and building a new plant, what impact do you think that's going to have on the 47 and 77 years?
None. That reflects all of our costs right now.
Okay.
What is 47?
The question has to do with the monthly sewer fee. Do you have another house that's sewered in here, or is that, you just went online and took a look? Yeah, good for you. So the question had to do with the ongoing sewer fee, and we'll talk about that in detail in a moment, but no, all that's factored in. And you got a question? Yes, sir.
John, can you lead us through the process of breaking down, like last year you took the amount that was like our 50%, the interest rate was something like 4%, 6%.
Yeah, we're going to ballpark around 4.
You spread it over like 25 years, and then we were able to break down how much every month we would be paying. Like it was like, I think it was something like $50 a month is how it was going to impact our budget. So can you take like the amount and show us, break it down by the year and by the month so we can see the cost?
So the question was, has to do with costs and how the total assessment breaks down to annual and monthly. And we will get to those costs in a minute. I'm almost there, I promise. Also, some of these costs are just a little bit preliminary. There'll be some refinements. I'm hoping to refine them down a little bit, although they're not that high. If you look around, again, where I live, it was $20,000 for their assessment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all perspective. Oh, what do you know? Cost considerations. So, a little trivia. Well, it's not trivia. It's more a guessing game, and there are no prizes. I'm sorry. You just get to look smart in front of your peers. Total project cost for this whole thing. No grants. What do you think the raw, straightforward project cost is for all those areas I showed down? Hey, come on.
$2 million.
20 million.
Who said 20? You're the closest so far.
25.
Ready?
38.
No, it's not 30 million. It's a mere 38 million. So yeah, $38 million. Now, I gotta tell you, back in '04 when we started this, it was 72 million. But we've knocked that much out.
Why was it that much?
Because there was a lot more being built.
And there were no grants?
Yeah, there were grants. We've knocked out half of that. We've taken it down. We've built it. We've gotten all that money. And for years, folks, I got to tell you, there were earmarks. There are all kinds of funds available through, our representatives in Washington, but they changed the rules back in '08. All that went away, and we had to figure out a whole new strategy, which we did with the Army Corps, which is a blessing. That's all I can say about it, how we got into that. So state and federal grants are going to take about that much out of that pot, though. There you go. So right away, our goal is to take $19 million right out of there. So a single family before grants, that's the actual cost. That's what it costs us to bring this wastewater facility to your property before grants. And that's what we're looking for. Now this is an average. This is going to fluctuate a little bit, and I'm thinking it's going to go down, and here's why I think it's going to go down. Right now our calculations don't include a count of all the multifamily properties, and what they'll do is spread the cost a little bit more because multifamily pays for each unit on that property. So if you have an apartment complex or something like that, that will spread the cost a little bit further. Plus, there are still some funding considerations with some of the design money that we already have grants for. That'll be plowed into this, so I expect this number to drop a little bit. Ma'am, you had your hand up? Did I get it?
taking a picture.
Oh, you're taking a picture. All this is going to be posted on the website, by the way. The whole presentation will be, of course. Yes, sir.
Can you break down the 8,000 over 25 years? Tell us the interest rate and tell us how much we're going to pay each year and how much each month.
I can't. I don't know if I do it on this slide, but let me look. Let me
Or
go
just
on.
do it roughly. It doesn't have to be exact.
While I'm going through this, let me think if I can remember
Okay.
back to the spreadsheet I was playing with. I've been playing with a lot of numbers today, folks. So a vacant parcel, anybody have vacant parcels up here? Okay. So before the grant, that would have been about a little over almost $14,000. With the grant, $6,852 over 20 to 30 years.
I've owned a lot for 27 years.
Yeah.
And don't plan on building.
Right.
It seems awful high just to put a pipe across 70 feet of.
So the comment was that he's owned a lot for quite some time, doesn't plan on building. And that's fine. So it's a financial decision, folks, you own it. I mean, if I owned a lot, my question to myself would be, I may not plan on building, do I ever plan on selling? And if I do plan on selling, if somebody's gonna build there, is it more attractive to have the infrastructure in place or not? And that's really a decision you have to make. Yes, ma'am?
Is this cost just the pipe to the street and then the hookup from the street to where it hooks to our home is on top of this cost?
Yes.
Okay, so the difference between the single family, which is an improved property, and the vacant is that we put the connection fee in there so you don't have to come out of pocket with that. So what is a connection fee? That's the capacity at the plant. And then you get 50% grant applied to that. So that's what brings it down to 811, 6852. What does that build? It builds all the infrastructure in the street. That includes all the capacity in the main treatment plant and interceptor lines to facilitate whatever wastewater is coming from your property. And it builds a lateral to your property line. Now, public financing cannot go onto your private property. Now, there was one time back in 8011, and I'm talking back in 2002, which we got the Environmental Protection Agency who gave us the grant to build. We went back to them and said, hey, thanks for helping us build, but if people can't afford to hook up, what good's your sewer? And they said, we agree with you. And for the first time anywhere, we were very proud of that, they actually gave a portion of funding for the on-site work, which is where they come onto your property, they expose the lid to the septic tank, they pump it out, they backfill it with soil or gravel, they compact it so you don't have a sinkhole in your yard, and they bring it out to the lateral to the connection point. All of that private property work is yours. Now, one thing the district did do back in 1990s, the late 90s, when I first started in this program, is I said, you know, a lot of people can't afford this. What can we do? Can we do anything? And we got very innovative again. Mission Springs has always been extremely innovative from how we find money to how we help people pay for these infrastructure projects. We created a loan program. We've never seen this before. The district will do a loan program for your on-site work, spread it over 10 years. And so it makes it easy and you just pay it back on your water bill. So we try to do everything we can to facilitate that. And I tell you, there's a lot of contortion that goes into this. Again, I lived here for 20 years. I now live in Cathedral City. They did nothing like that. It was 20 grand, have a nice day. Yes, ma'am.
This 10-year loan you're talking about for the hookup, what interest rate is it under?
The 10-year loan, the rule is that it's 2% over our local investment earnings to cover for administration, or 5%, whichever is lower or higher.
Is that fixed?
5% is the
Loan,
minimum.
or is it variable?
It's fixed.
Okay.
Here first, and then I'll get you.
Now, when it comes time for this, everything from my house out to the street, do I have to use the city's people to do that, or I can have my own people come in?
Okay, good question. So the question is the on-site work. What do I have to do? Do I have to use a city-approved person to do my abatement? That's kind of the gist of your
That
question.
happened to my brother. They told him, no, he couldn't do it. And he was able to do it himself.
No, you can do it yourself on your private property, but you still have to pull a permit and get it
Exactly,
inspected. It
yeah.
has to be done according to specs.
Yeah.
So you don't have a health hazard on your property.
Yeah.
Or a sinkhole.
Yeah, I'm
or
not worried
something.
about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and believe me, it happens. And in fact, folks, we've done a lot of these, even when the professional does it, and you get your first rainstorm. We've seen sinkholes, and the district say, hey, you gotta get back over there and fix that. And of course they did. They make it right. And they restore your landscaping. So it's kind of pro and con depending on your skill
Makes
set.
sense, makes sense, okay.
Did I understand you to say that you do not have to remove the existing septic tank?
Great question. So the question has to do with the existing septic tank that have to be removed. And the question is that you've got a big tank underground, and some of you have not only a tank, but you have a seepage pit in addition to that. Or you have a leach field. So it doesn't have to be removed, they backfill it. They leave that shell in the ground, but they make sure it's good and compacted so you don't have a problem later on in your yard. Yes, sir?
Is there a projected timeline for this whole project?
The question about projected timeline, I have that for you in a moment. Yes, sir?
They pump your tank first, then they backfill.
Yes.
DWA in Cathedral City Cove, almost $5,000.
That's where I live. Yes. For the hookup.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not seeing those prices here. I will give you what we're seeing up here very recently. I'll give you the range. And there's a lot of factors that drive that. Landscaping, backyard, front, so I'll get to that. Yes?
John, I never did get my question answered. I asked 2 times. We didn't break down this figure. I need to know this
not there yet.
8,000. Oh,
Yeah.
what interest rate? How much is it gonna cost me a year? How much
Almost
a month?
Okay. Multifamily, anybody here own a multifamily property, duplex, triplex? You do. So before grants, it was almost $13,000 per unit. In this case, it's $64.90 per unit. So
Is that the same as last year?
It's 0.8. That's the way it's calculated. It's 0.8 of a single-family dwelling.
Okay.
And the interest rate that we're estimating is 20 to 30 years at 4%. Now, I didn't calculate this down to the level you're talking about, but if I remember, it's in the mid 400s to 500 a year as an assessment.
Roughly 49, 30 something per month.
And that, oh, okay, and so that would be paid twice. Like, I pay my taxes twice a year, so I would split that
Half and
bill.
half.
Yeah, so it'd be
Yeah.
about $250 a time.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that this whole 8,000 can be put on this plan, or is there part of it that you have to come out of pocket with, and only part of it?
No, that's one of the beauties of assessment districts. It's your choice. When we're ready to construct, and not before that. See, what happens if you vote for this, it shows on the title of your property that there was an assessment district approved, but you don't pay. The only time you pay is if we get the grant money and come to you and say, hey, we're ready to build in your neighborhood, and it's a cash collection period. Now, you can either pay some, I think the minimum is $500, some against that and leave the rest to roll over the tax bill, or let the whole thing roll over the tax bill. I had a conversation with a gentleman today. I keep talking about conversations today. It's been a busy day. And I think about this as well. If I plan on, in fact, when I lived up here and voted for that, I didn't plan on owning my house for more than 5 years. Well, I put it on the long term. Why? Because I'm talking cash flow, folks. Now, if I'm going to live there for 20 years or even 15, I don't want to pay the interest, I'll try and come out of pocket and pay off at least most of it, if not the whole thing. It's a business decision for your own budgets.
I think what you're saying is, because you can amortize this over
Yes.
20 to 30 years, I don't know which,
Right.
but say it's 25 years,
Right.
you could, in essence, say you're going to live there for 5 years or 10 years, you could get a whole sewer system 100% and only pay yourself for a fraction of the cost if you're not here for all that time.
May I call you Madam Astute?
Yes.
So the astute synopsis of that comment was, the idea is that if you can do this and get the project built, and you're only going to pay a portion, depending on how long you're going to live at that parcel, or own that parcel, or live at that property, and you're only going to pay from when we actually construct it until you sell it or move or whatever the case, and it may be a few $100s. You are absolutely very astute, very correct. Let me go here, here, and then there. Yes, sir.
You mentioned Quando at Miracle Hill.
Yes.
Where it changed its name from Cuba. And you talked about Hacienda.
Yes.
Are you gonna go beyond Hacienda and up to Desert View?
Anything above Hacienda that is not currently sewered will have the option to bring facilities up there, yes. It's all included. If there's no sewer in the greater Desert Hot Springs area where there's high density of septic tanks, mission lakes, and within the city limits, you are included in this project. Here?
Groundwater.
Yes, ma'am.
My mother lived in an area, they voted down the system. 2 years later, their groundwater quality was determined to be unacceptable, though I think the county was the main thing.
The health department, yeah,
Somebody
possibly.
came through and basically said, you have to do.
Is not currently sewered will have the option to bring facilities up there, yes. It's all included. If there's no sewer in the greater Desert Hot Springs area where there's high density of septic tanks, mission lakes, and within the city limits, you are included in this project. Here?
All right, groundwater.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, my mother lived in an area, they voted down the system, okay? 2 years later, their groundwater quality was determined to be unacceptable, though I think the county was the main thing.
The health department, yeah,
Somebody
possibly.
came through and basically said, you have to do it now.
That has
And it cost
happened.
them 4 times as much as what they would have been voted on. Is that a possibility of happening?
Okay, so the question is, could sewers ever be mandated because of water quality problems? So the answer is absolutely yes. In the high desert, the Water Quality Control Board said, look folks, you have wastewater from your septic tanks impacting this groundwater. You've got to do something, or what they did was a threat of a cease and desist. A cease and desist, what's that mean? Well, cease and desist from discharge of wastewater. Well, how do you do that if you don't have a sewer system? That's what the order had to do with. Right now at North Palm Springs at I-10 Indian, one of the problems with that area developing is the regional board said, you're too close to valley water supplies. They didn't use the word moratorium, but there's restrictions on what you can build out there now. You have to build what they call advanced wastewater treatment or a sewer system. So yes, has that happened in other areas? Has groundwater been polluted? All over the country, of course it has. Will they do it here? That's yet to be seen, but they have their eye on this area and they did support the legislation to make sure that no more growth happens without protecting the groundwater.
But they have the power to do that if it happens.
The state of California has power to do that, absolutely. And this is you guys know our water. I mean, it's awesome water. There's just no doubt about it. We took in the top 5 again this year in the international tasting competition. I mean, it's great water, and the spa water is, it's the lifeblood. So you want to protect those.
So if they did that, we may not, and if we say no now, and in 2 years, I don't know, whatever, a year, 5 years, something happens like that, and they say, you've got to do it now, we're not guaranteed of any kind of grant or anything like that at that point in time. We would have to pay the whole thing.
So the comment is, if the regulatory agency did come in and mandate, there may not be grants available. That is possible, but I have found this. When they do come in and regulate, they figure out a way to help too. And by the way, all these state grants come through the State Water Resources Control Board. So they got their hands in this, and they administer these funds. Why? Because they want to protect groundwater. That's why they do these bonds. Yes, sir.
John, earlier you said that way back when you first started the conversion, I guess 10 years ago, the first group of homes, you were able to convince one California board to pay for the connection fees.
It's
Is there any
EPA,
way-
federal.
Yeah, the EPA. Can you go back to them and ask them if they'll pay half of our? I mean, they might say yes.
You are one tenacious guy. I remember you from the last meeting.
They might actually say yes.
No, you know what, let me tell you,
Never heard
one of my
that.
main jobs has been, and I'll just go to a little history, it's good for video. So my first job up here was in the older part of town. There was sewer available to a lot of parcels, about 425 parcels. And their connection fee was not included in their assessment district. So they had to come out of money with not only their connection fee, which was over $2,000 or about $2,000, plus the on-site work in one of the demographically most difficult parts of the community. And I said, there's no way. So my job was, in 1995, find money. That was the whole christening of my career, find money. And we did. We found it through state, federal, senior home repair program, county. We found money under trees, left on buses, wherever. And we figured out, we got all those people connected, and almost every single one of them got a grant to take care of at least half of those costs. So we never stopped. In fact, as I'm talking to you, and the question that you raised about would they mandate it, in the high desert, one of the things they did, and we're going to talk to them about, is they gave them a 1% loan to help facilitate that up there, that huge project up there. 1%, that's great. We're talking 4% here, which is low, but 1% is even lower. And when you amortize that out, the annual outlay, it really gets affected by it. So we will not stop shaking the trees if we can find money. If the Congress is talking about, going back and looking at earmarks again, They've been talking about that since early this year. If that happens, we're gonna be back in Washington on EPA's door and say, look, you guys did it before, we have this community, here's what the income levels look like, blah, 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 and whether your incomes are that or not, doesn't matter, the community is. Will you help us get people to get that on-site work done? And we'll keep going. That's our
Our
focus.
average income in Desert Hot Springs is only like 35,000.
Yeah, it's in the 30s.
Yeah, it's really low.
Yeah, well, that's,
So maybe they'll help us based on
that can help us, it does help us. It makes us very attractive, especially to the state grants, because one of the things they look for is what they call a DAC, a disadvantaged community.
Right.
And I realize there's people at this part of the echelon and people at this part of the echelon, but when you find the middle, you realize that the demographic up here makes us extremely attractive to funding. I'll go back to it again, 30 million, population of 40,000, think about that. Yes, sir.
The assessments are assumable, there is no due on sale when you sell or convey to someone else.
It rolls over. So the question was for the video, are the assessments due upon sale? No, it absolutely rolls over, just like your solar panels do. Yes, sir.
So, say you put in the sewer line, can you mandate the property owner to connect?
There is a connection requirement, it's state law, as well as local ordinance. The first notice is once the sewer is available, and you'll know because it takes a while to build this stuff. Your streets will be torn up, your carpet will be messy, your driveway will be a mess, because it'll be dirty everywhere. And we'll replace the streets, you'll get a notice that the sewer is now available, it's a 90-day notice. You can say, well, give me 120 days, we go out, I believe as far as we go is 120 days. The good thing about that is everybody's connecting at once, then you start getting together, going to that contractor and say, look, your price for him is this, your price for her is this. I'll tell you what, we'll get 10 of our homes, give us a real good price, and they'll do that. We've seen that in times past. Yes.
Should I also understand that in addition to whatever amount you might pay per month if you decide to do this, there is also a monthly fee payable to the water district for
Yeah, I
sewer?
have that on a coming slide. Let me see if that's right next. Well, what do you know, additional cost. So the question had to do with monthly fees. So sewer service charge, yes, and we'll explain what that is. So for improved properties only, obviously a vacant property, you're not hooked to anything, you're not going to pay anything. So the septic abatement, right now, currently, we're seeing them as low as $1,800 for the on-site work. Now, what is the scenario? Well, most of your homes, not all, but most of your homes, the septic tank's in the front yard. It's a quick shot, it's right there, no overhill, no overdale, no going under walls in most cases. That's the low end we're seeing right now. Back when I started this, it was $650 way back. So, again, that inflation. The high end is, it depends. That's my dollar sign, it depends. Well, it's because it does. It depends on if it's in the backyard, some are. Now, folks, we had a connection here in town, and they built a room over the septic tank.
Oh.
That was a little costly. You had to cut open the floor, you had to come through the window to pump it, you had to do everything. What a mess. Don't ever build anything over your septic tank that you love. In fact, we had a lady fall into a septic tank. Don't even stand over your septic tank. It's a true story. But here's the deal on that again, I mentioned it earlier. MSWD finance available. Right now the sewer service fee is $47.77 a month. It's billed on the tax bill. That's how we collect it. Now what does that do? That's for the wastewater. It exits your house. We have, when you're connected to sewer, a piece of our treatment plant is dedicated to your property, a single family home forever. Our guys are down there 24/7, that plant's running, operating, churning water through, and processing that according to state law and regulation, and it's discharged in an environmentally friendly manner. That's the cost of that right now.
So that would be added to your
Yeah, you break it down by month.
taxes.
But we collect it through the tax bill, but it's a monthly cost. That's how I'd calculate if I were you a month. I'd set that aside, in other words, what I do. Well, actually, they make me pay it every month on my water bill at home. But if I was paying it on the tax bill, that's what I would set aside every month then I'd pay it on my tax bill.
Precious, what is the rate again for the financing for
Yeah.
MSWD?
Right now, the financing for MSWD is 5%, 10 years.
Oh, thanks.
Say that again, I'm sorry, what was that?
5% over 10 years for MSWD to finance your on-site work.
And that comes out of your water account.
It comes out of your water, it show up right on your water bill as a line item. Yes, sir.
Is that gonna stay the same, the interest rates?
It is, yeah, it's not gonna be over 5.
So they're fixed.
Because it's 5% or what we call LAIF, which local agency investment funds, where we invest our money. And The rule is, it's 2% over that, what we receive on our earnings, or 5%. Now, the reason for that is if we don't charge at least what we earn, plus administration, it becomes a gift of public funds. That's the way it is. So we have to recover the money that we loaned you as if it was still sitting in that investment. Otherwise, we're not using our investments for the growth of your money. And inflation attacks us too. Let's see. Okay, now here's the timeline. We're getting outreach and voting. So right now through June, we're doing these meetings and mailings. And at some point in the next month or so, probably toward the end of April, mid-May, after we've tried, got the video out, talked to everybody, we're going to do surveys. Now the surveys are incredibly important because the balloting process that could follow the surveys is quite expensive. And we don't want to do a balloting process unless we have a good idea that there's interest in the community to move forward. So when those surveys hit the mailbox, we appreciate if you would fill those out and return them, or we will have a link through the MSWD.org/8018 for you to click through, put in your probably assessor's parcel number because that covers vacant parcels, and indicate. So that's being set up now, but it's not time to do that yet. So when those surveys are out, now why do we do that? Well, because the surveys I'm going to bring in this very room to this very board and say, here are the results of our surveys. Now the more surveys I get, the more accurate it's going to be. If I don't get a survey of a pretty decent percentage of the stakeholders, then I'm kind of shooting in the dark. And I don't want to waste your ratepayer money having them agree to a process that's going nowhere. So in July, if the surveys do indicate support, the board then takes an action. They pass a resolution called a resolution of intention. And what does that mean? Well, it's a resolution of intention to form Assessment District 18. The public hearing date cannot be less than 45 days from when we send out those ballots. So they'll set that date. We'll probably go like 60 days to make it part of a regular meeting. So the plan right now, based on when money is coming down the road, which is next year, is to try and get this thing buttoned up by September, October. Now, let me show you how the balloting works. In September, we'll count only ballots submitted, and I'll go into more detail on that, but that's very important to you. So, real quick.
Could you not read the page yet? Because I had a question on that page.
Go ahead.
You're finally getting into the area that I've been wondering about because I had some questions about formation of assessment district. I now see through this slide that the assessment district is formed after the surveys are turned back in.
Correct.
Okay, now last year I remember you said the surveys did come in and they came in a healthy manner.
Yes.
And you had several hundred or whatever. And so you said, you told us that the surveys indicated, go ahead, gave you the green light, go ahead and go with it.
You're causing great pain in me, but yes.
So we formed the assessment district, based on the surveys. Now, I was dismayed because last year I didn't get a survey in the mailbox. And I didn't get to vote on the survey, but I did vote on the ballot. Some reason I got the ballot. So
Okay, two things. Believe me, I heard you loud and clear at the meeting, so I knew what your vote was.
Yeah.
But here's what happened. Let me explain this for a moment for all of you. So the survey is not the ballot. The survey is an indicator whether we need to go to ballot. Now here's what happened last year. And again, all that counseling is now out the window. We received a survey that indicated that we had a margin of 68 votes in favor of forming an assessment district in a small area, one of these areas. Now, the sad thing is when the ballots came in, we had a greater margin than 68%. It was much larger than that. But when the ballots came in, 68 people who said yes on the survey failed to send in their ballot. And it failed by 8 votes.
Wow.
Now you know why I need counseling. Because it was an affirmative, and if only 8 of the 68 would have sent in their ballots, it would have passed. And we'd be talking about a little less than we're talking about today, not in cost, but in scope. But I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. I can see all of your faces.
Kept you busy for a year.
It kept me well busy.
So John,
yes, so go ahead, finish it.
So what I would do, I'm gonna, myself, in July, be looking for my survey, and if I don't receive it, I'm gonna contact the C. Moran at MSW.org.
MSWD.org, but you'll get it before July. The surveys are gonna go out probably in May.
In May?
Yeah, because we need to show up at the board meeting in June with a recommendation. And plus, again, let me go back to this. There'll be an electronic link, so you don't actually have to mail something. You can just go on, click, 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 done.
And then it would be 45 days after the survey, the
No.
ballot?
No. If the surveys show favor, in July, we'll go to the board and say, go ahead, take action, and then that's when the 45-day clock starts, in July.
And then at the end of the 45 days is when the ballot shows up in the box?
Is when the ballot, no, that's when we count them. You'll get them right after they say go in July. So the question is on the process of the ballots. So in July, if the board takes action to move forward, ballots will get stuck in the mailbox. We have to provide a minimum of 45 days. We're going to provide more. It'll be more like 60 days for you to return your ballot back to us. Whether you do it physical, bring it in the office, mail it back to us, or if you don't live in the area, scan it, sign it, scan it, and email it to us. Our attorney said we'll accept that. Yes, sir.
So, based on how many properties you own, do you have that many votes, or you just have one?
Awesome question. The question was based on how many properties you own. Do you have one vote or more? When you get down to it, it is the valuation of the properties that you own in the sense of a single-family dwelling is equal to a single-family dwelling. But a duplex is equal to about 1.5 single-family dwellings. So for that one property, your weight, you carry more weight on your ballot. Because at the end of the day, it's tallied by dollars. So if a guy owns a big old apartment complex, that's a lot of weight in votes that that person carries by that vote. If you have 5 properties, you get a ballot for all of those properties that are affected by the project.
So
And there are a lot of multi-property, in fact, you guys said you own a vacant in addition to an improved property?
Side by side.
So you get two, you'll get 2 ballots, one for one amount, one for the other, and when we tally them up, it'll take the combination of those two, the cost against that.
But is the vacant lot just as powerful as the single-family dwelling?
No, a vacant lot is less, because you don't have, it's unimproved, so you don't have, it's not a higher assessment amount. So it all comes down to the assessment amount against that property.
Money.
That's what really comes down to it. It comes down to pennies. It comes down to pennies. Yes, ma'am.
During the summer, some of us will be away now and then. How are we going to be notified other than regular mail? Will we get an email? Will we get a text?
Well, not unless I have that information, but it will be U.S. mail. Are you U.S. mail or Canadian mail?
Yeah, U.S.
Okay.
But if we're away
I hear that's
for,
a plus, but
if we're away for a month,
Yeah.
and, you know.
Are you having your mail forwarded?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so that's the process. But the good thing is 60 days. And if you know we're going to the board, or we're going to be sending out these surveys in around May, you could always log on to the website and just check if the survey is up. And all you have to do is plug in your information. So that'll help. Yes, sir.
So John, as far as the time frame is concerned, let's say this thing flies through the ballot and it gets approved, when would we be looking at starting actual construction on the project?
Okay, I'm going to get to that.
Okay, all right.
That's a great question. The question has to do with timing on actual construction. And there are some funding timelines that we're approaching quickly. And one of those is the annual request for the Army Corps for their 2020 work plan. And what this is, this would give us that, actually we have something for the 2020 work plan from a previously passed assessment district. This would be 2021, but you have to ask in 2020. And you have to show community match, otherwise don't bother asking. Because they can't build if there's not community match. Let's see if this shows you where they've been. Okay, so we're going to get through this. I didn't want to go too long on this. So there are some advantages, disadvantages, obviously to both. Low cost to operate septic tanks, right? Now, if you're pumping it when you're supposed to, which most people don't, you should pump it every 3 to 5 years, depending on how many people in your household. Most people wait, and in year 20 they pump it, and they can't figure out why in year 21 they're pumping it again. Just letting you know.
I'm every 6 months.
They will fill, yeah, you know what, I know people
It's
that are almost
costly.
on a monthly. Yes, ma'am.
Real quick, septic tanks, do you assist the homeowner in any way in locating their septic tank? Because I bought this home 3 years ago and I have no
Question
idea where
is,
it's
do you assist the homeowner in locating septic tank on a private property? There are as-bills, both at the city and the county, that tell you, hypothetically, where your septic tank is, but your septic tank contractor, those guys know how to find those things. They know how to sniff them out. Was that correct?
Yes. When I started having problems with my septic tank,
Yeah.
I went up to the city and I ended up getting two drawings. One shows a leach line and one shows a pit.
Yeah.
And I asked, what do I have? They couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
I said, so what did they sign off on when I seen the whole list of,
How old's your house?
it was built in 2005. I bought the house in 2007. A year and a half later, I've been fighting this problem ever since.
And you are in that
I was on
south of
Condo Way.
Hacienda?
I'm on.
Okay, so the
Pequeña.
question is that he went to the city and got a couple different renditions of what he has in the jar as far as abatement. It's possible, depending on percolation, that they might have set you up with both. It's possible that one is a septic tank and the other is a leach field, which works in concert with the septic tank. So the way it works, I should have put this graphic up. The septic tank is the first tank that your personal wastewater hits. And water sits in there, solids settle out to the bottom, and then the clear water is supposed to flow out over into your leach field or your pit. It's supposed to be clear water. But over time, what happens is those solids build up because people don't pump their tanks. And pretty soon the solids are then being pushed through, and your leach field's only got little tiny holes like this to spread the water out over your property. About 1.5 feet deep, by the way. That's where your wastewater is coming out. It spreads it out, but if solids start clogging those holes, all of a sudden now, that stops percolating, letting water out, backs up, pretty soon your septic tank, all of a sudden it's overflowing at the lid, your system's shot. You can't remediate it. Well, you can, but it's very costly. You gotta go out and redig all that or dig a pit. So there's a number of things at play. But as far as most of the time, and I worked at the city in 2005, most of the time your as-built will be very accurate as to, at least anything built past the mid-90s should be extremely accurate. Now, they couldn't tell you your contractor, or you'll be able to find it though.
Yeah, because I just don't want to pay the money to fix this, because I was told back in 2012, we were supposed to have sewers put in.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Well, we're at, what, 2019 right now?
Yeah.
19.
It wasn't for not trying.
And
I will
so,
give you that.
that's why I've just been fighting this. So, I mean, I don't want to go with another.
Well, there is an
thing that-
alternative. And the alternative, and I'm trying not to be cheeky or facetious. If the community was willing to pay that whole 16 grand, we'll do this thing tomorrow, and we won't have to wait for grant money. But the problem is, may not be any of you in this room, but there's a lot of people out there, and there's no way on earth. We have to find the grant money. And it starts with the seed money. We go to the granting agency and say, look, this community's kicked in. They match, and then we build it. That's the only way we know to get the price low enough. And we've used this model over and over again since I started doing this back in the late 90s.
Thank you for trying to save us money.
We are. Seriously. We know the problem. Our primary focus, I mean, why have they been paying me all these years? Well, because our focus as an agency, that groundwater is everything. That's our charge. That's our mission. We need to protect it, and that's what we do. Yes, sir.
So there's a number of us here that are in Mission Lakes, and you said you talked to the board.
I talked to the Future Planning Commission, our committee, which is a small group here.
What, in addition to this process, does that add to the process? Dealing with an HOA, so are there going to be more hoops to jump through? Is it going to come up for a vote in the HOA? And it's still more
proceed to HOA.
No, I'm being a little bit silly here. Mission Lakes Country Club with HOAs, there's nothing usually more, because each of you as property owners within that HOA have the right to vote however you want. Now, what we are going to do with Mission Lakes, because it is really well organized, we're probably going to have multiple meetings, this same meeting up there for members and for the board itself, which we've done every time we've done this. We've come up and talked to the board. Once they shut it down up there, the other time they voted overwhelmingly in support back in '04. We just couldn't get the grant money. We got a lot of grant money, but we didn't get enough to finish the whole thing. That's why we're back today. So let me just quickly pop through this. So obviously it's low cost. Eventually every septic tank does fail. That's part of life. They are expensive to replace, and these are current numbers. Up in the Highlands specifically, this person's been talking to me and begging for 2 years, please, 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 please. She's up in the higher end of this, getting a quote to replace her problem up there. Rehab is out of pocket too. You don't get 30 years on that unless you take a second on your home, which for a septic tank. The potential for groundwater contamination is the real driver behind our board's action. Central sewer service, yeah, it is a permanent solution. Your maintenance on that side is nothing. But there's a fee, and we've talked about that a little bit, there's a cost. At the end of the day though, we get a hold of that wastewater, we take care of it correctly. And at the end of the day, we're looking at long-term, again, that whole reuse thing is extremely important to our area. Especially, you guys remember, we used to have a drought, remember those days? Oh yeah, 2 years ago. We don't have a drought right now. Believe me, it's like this, folks, it'll be back, and that's when all these water supply balance and all that comes back into play. So let's talk about the balloting process. So again, if surveys indicate interest, the board initially aids this in July. Only property owners get a ballot. Again, I just want to reiterate that. You are the only ones that have a right to burden your property with any kind of a financing district. Ballots will include the public hearing date. It'll be very clearly marked on there. They're tallied at the public hearing, but here's the thing. It's the majority ballots for or against the monetary value of those. Based on valuation will determine the outcome. And by the way, only return ballots. Let's say there's 2,500 parcels, ballpark, and only 10 ballots come in, guess what? If there's 6 ballots for or against, they carry it for everybody. Only turned in ballots matter. Properly executed, by the way, so be careful. We try to make them as simple as possible, but there is state law on what has to be disclosed. You have to sign, and you have to certify that you're the owner, or that you have the right on behalf of the owner to sign that thing. All right? That's all it's considered. The other thing is, a lot of you asked about the timeline on construction, so I'll get to that right here. So grants come incrementally. So right now with the Army Corps, for instance, they've told us, come in and ask for $2 to $3 million a year. And we'll fund it, and we'll fund it, and we'll fund it. Now, here's the good thing. Our authorization with them is $35 million for construction. So there's a lot there, but boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And the Army Corps thus far hasn't built things as efficiently as we do, so we're working with them trying to figure out how to make their money not more expensive than no money. That sounds funny, but that's the facts. So it comes incrementally. So what do we do about that because it comes incrementally? That's how we built everything so far. Well, years ago we put together a 10-point criteria that indicated a lot of things. Number one was, how are there a lot of vacant lots or a few vacant lots in that neighborhood? High densities. Where are they in proximity to which groundwater? Demographics, shovel ready, which is the next one. What does shovel ready mean? Is the engineering already done, the design work, which some areas it is. So we did this 10-point criteria and we laid these sub-areas out for priority. We are going to revisit that because I was reading it again today, and some of that stuff's actually obsolete. We didn't realize after all these years things have changed. So we'll probably look at that criteria again. It may change which areas we start with. And there are restrictions on funding. We get funding from a lot of pots. There may be a pot of money that they'll look at Mission Lakes and say, no, we won't touch that. They're not disadvantaged community enough, but we will build over in this part of here. Will you do it? Of course we'll do it. We're not going to say no to money. So that comes into play from time to time.
Have them come visit my house, we'll be disadvantaged.
Well, that's true. And that's the thing. It's up here we have such a mix. Yes, ma'am.
We have a rumor going around in town of where we live. It's going to cost us more because we have so much granite up there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because
Now,
construction.
That rumor's in
That's the benefit of the economy of scale.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, as an example, above area D3, above this area, what do they call that up there? The top of Mission,
Waterman Heights.
top of Palm, above
Waterman
Mission
Heights.
Lakes Boulevard, same condition. And they were all part of one assessment district, along with some stuff below there. We did it all for the same price.
Okay.
Because it's economy of scale, it works. That's the great thing about doing it with a large, a broader financing district. Yes?
So, assuming the surveys come back positive, the balloting comes back positive, with 2,500 units that you're gonna need to hook up, and you're gonna have to prioritize the areas, what is the approximate time frame for all of those 2,500 units once construction begins? More or less? I know it's hard.
We could, if we continue to work well with the Army Corps, we could say 6 to 8 years.
6 to 8 years.
But we have other money coming from the state through those propositions, and all we have to do is get our seed money in place so we can go to them, and that could accelerate it, so. We would like, it has to be within 10 years, because if we go 10 years, folks, when we go build it, that thing disappears off your title, and nothing happens, and I'm not gonna be doing this again, I'm too old.
A majority of that part that you haven't done yet is over the hot water aquifer. And from what I understand, a lot of areas it's only 75 feet deep. Now down in town, where you've done them all, it's 200 feet deep in the cold water area. Why did you not give priority to the moneymaker of the city?
You know, I can't speak for before my tenure here, but the other areas were prioritized based on not just proximity to the hot water, but also the drinking water. Because it is a moneymaker, but the other is your public health. So that's part of it. The other thing is Mission Lakes is right where the fault line splits, so Mission Lakes affects both. That's why it's got somewhat of a priority. But as far as prior to that, we did the 10-point criteria in around 2005, 2006, where they said, look, we get this money incrementally, we need to come up with a way that we can approach the community where everybody's happy, because we were getting kind of clamored. People were saying, hey, build here, build here, build here. We said, okay, we have to figure this out, and so we did. That 10-point criteria, I believe, is on our website. I'm not sure, but I think I'm going to talk to our team this week to say, hey, we need to readdress this, see if it's still accurate. Let's see, construction abatement, we already talked about that a lot. We build the main lines and laterals to your property line. You're responsible for your septic abatement connection to the sewer main, or the 18, or it depends on what your specific situation is. No need to stay there long. MSWD provides large flows, already talked about that, over 10 years. And here's frankly, the second to last slide. So it really is up to you, folks. Again, I'm sharing information. What you want to do with it, it's up to you, and it will always be up to you. You all vote. You've got the power to choose, and you know what you choose is going to have an impact on your property and the community for good. So your forefathers that made these decisions, thank you. You know, and that's additional questions. That's my contact information. Let me get her, and then I'll get you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Just if the votes come back very split, so Mission Lakes goes for it and the Highland doesn't.
It's all one group.
But would you take that into consideration and then, you know, have only one?
So here's what we've done in years past, and we're talking about doing this. We did a dual ballot when we first did the whole big area, all right? And the dual ballot had 2 questions. Do you want all of, back then it was Assessment District 12, boy, we've come a long way. Do you want all of Assessment District 12 to go, yes or no? If an assessment district as a whole fails, do you want your sub-area to go? Yes or no? Now, all of Assessment District 12 passed by 72%, so there was no question. But it did provide for that, and we are looking at that to make sure state law still supports us doing it that way, and the grant money can balance all that out. Excuse me, so that is a possibility, and by the time we get to the ballot phase, we will know the answer for sure on that. So you may be able to stand alone, for instance, in the Highlands, where I'm getting a lot of calls about septic problems. And part of it is because it's difficult to build up there. It's granite, you got rock. I mean, drive up there on Highland Avenue and all that. I mean, you see what the houses are built on these, you know, this hunks of rock, and they had to fracture with dynamite to even get it to percolate. So it's different everywhere, and some communities want it, some don't. But overall, we start with the overall. Yes, sir.
My question was, the flyer showed 3 meetings between this month and next. Are they going to be pretty much the same, or should someone plan on attending all 3?
Well, if I were one of you, knowing it was the same, I'd want to come back. I mean, who wouldn't want to come back? It's the very same. It's the very same meeting. Now, historically, folks, you are breaking the norm. We rarely get this many people, which looks like the room is just the right size. Thank you very much. It's a good thing. Yeah, there'll be more meetings. But I have a feeling a lot of people I talked to on the phone actually are waiting for the movie. Here, and then there.
So if it passes and you begin with Mission Lakes, does the Highland get assessed at the same time, or do they wait until you begin construction?
So the question is, will you be assessed prior to us literally constructing in your neighborhood? And no. You will not. Only when we are ready to build the infrastructure, we will notify you that it's cash collection time, we're gonna spend money now, sewer's coming up your street. So no,
Under the same
and Mission
con-
Lakes isn't first necessarily, by the way, I don't wanna put that out there. I have to relook at the order, but I'm not sure that that is actually the case, but regardless, I get your
Just
point.
looking at it,
Yeah,
And then if Mission Lakes came first, hypothetically,
hypothetically.
what are we looking in terms of the time frame for the Highlands?
Well, if we get the whole thing done, on the outside in 8 years, it would be incremental. It just depends on the annual funding. If we get $2 million 1 year, then we can build $4 million in sewer. If we get $4 million 1 year, we can build $8 million worth of sewer. See how it works? And pretty soon you're at that 19.
Right.
So you're talking, it could be 8 years, it could be 5 years. It depends on how the money flows in. That's why this whole strike while the iron hot concept, I'm not trying to hype you up or manipulate you. The fact is that there's a Prop 1 water bond that you're all paying taxes into, and that money's going to go somewhere in the state of California. And how do we want it here? I want it here. We want it here, and that's why we got to go after it. Yes, sir.
So, two-part question. Historically, I'm just wondering why, I haven't lived in Mission Lakes that long, but has there been a problem with Mission Lakes getting them on board with this?
In 1998, they said that they were not interested. Now there was reasons for that. It was about $6,800 back then. Yeah. And it might have been the messenger. The person doing it at that time actually lived in there, the prophet in his own town kind of thing. And there were other political issues that probably made that a very difficult offering. In 2004, they did support it. We just didn't get that far with grant money.
All right, and the second part of the question is, how, if anything, does the cannabis industry affect any improvement that we're talking about?
How does the cannabis industry affect it? Y'all ought to go ask them. Go ask them for a grant.
You're the grant writer.
I haven't found the industry grant program, but you do. Back to your point, you raise an interesting.
They're tying in every time you see them. They're tying in across the road, so you know it's sewer.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course, they like those nutrients in their groundwater. I'm not exactly sure. But that's an interesting thought, and I'm not saying anything of it. This is on film, so it's on the record. But that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
So you've given us a maxed out timeline of 6 or 8 or 10 years, possibly for all this. But let's go to the beginning of it. Say you're the first person who's going to get this done.
Lucky you.
When would that begin? If the ballots are in September.
Great, good question. So the funding we're asking for right now is for 2 pots of money that are coming down the road. One is the Army Corps of Engineers 2021 work plan, which we submit right after the end of this year. The other is Proposition 1, and there's a construction round, they call it an implementation round, coming in January. That we have to be ready to say, we can demonstrate local match. And so if we get that, government, not local government, of course, only state and federal government, they work at glacial speed. So if we get approved for a grant, let's say the first quarter of next year or the first half of next year, it'll still be another 8 months. So I would say the earliest we could break ground would be toward the end of next year on any specific area.
So you've talked a lot about demonstrating local match. Does that simply mean that we all vote in the affirmative?
Yeah, the local assessment is the key to everything. That is, I don't want to say the bait on the hook, but that tells the granting agencies that they can put money. See, here's how the grants work. There's people all over the state for these state grants clamoring for this money, right? And what the state does, you have to apply and your grant request is graded, it's scored. And one of the most important things is, the first question, do you have local match? And if you do not have local match, you're kicked right away.
Well, local match doesn't mean that there's money right there. It just means that the voters are approving of this project.
Well, once you approve...
But then we have to pony up when you get to our property.
Yeah, so an assessment district, a financing district, once you vote on it, it's a promise. It is a pledge. It says, we're ready, you bring that money, boom, we've committed to this portion. I saw a hand over here, yes, sir.
Yeah, on the cost that you're putting up now.
Yeah.
Let's say your property doesn't get done for 6 years. Okay, does the cost exactly stay the same? All the interest rates, the only thing that can change is your hookup to your house?
Okay, so the question is, we agree on assessment amount, we vote on it, you don't get billed for 6 years, inflation hits, all right? What happens? California state law says what you vote on is the maximum your assessment can be. Now, here's the caveat. I can't vouch for on-site work, obviously, we don't know. Like I told you, early on, we were seeing connections for $650, and now they're $1,800 is low. Interest rates. Now, when we go out, let's say we get $2 million from the Army Corps, we have your assessments to match. Now, what we do is we borrow from whoever, the state revolving fund, against your assessments, because you're not paying me right now. I'm not going to ask you for, whatever.
Right.
Whatever the rates are in that time are what are paid back over the spread. So if I get money at 5%, that'll affect your payback. It won't affect your principal amount. We can't ever change the principal up. Can it change down? Yes, it can change down, but it cannot change up. You have a question?
Can you define local match? Like, just define it.
Local match is a pledge of funding that the community will contribute to the project, i.e. in this case, the financing district that you agree on, if you indeed do so. There's another hand somewhere? Yes?
I'm just texting a friend, telling him what's going on. So what I heard you say was the cost per home will be about $8,000, and then the hookup to each house will be a separate fee of about, did I get 1,800?
Well, it's not really a fee, it's whatever your contractor's gonna charge. So this is a private property negotiation. What I'm saying, the 1,800 is what we're seeing right now on the low end.
Okay, and then the sewer service, I explained that,
Right.
that's $47.77, and the septic abatement.
That's the hookup, that's the 1,800.
That's the same thing.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I was.
I got just a
Yes.
small question. My mother used to live in Imperial Beach, and they have sewer pumping stations throughout the city.
Yeah.
Because it's a flat surface.
We have a couple of those as well.
They pay $40 a month, and we're on a hill. It rolls downhill.
You're ready.
Just saying.
I've read that in business books. No, we have pump stations too. All costs are local though, actually. It just depends on what treatment's required, the size of the system, the maintenance required, all costs are local. And that's why we always talk about, people always say, well, you are this and CBWD is that, and other. All costs are localized. It just depends on the specifics of your area, what drive those costs. So one more thing I want to point out. For a water agency, a public agency, whether it's your water bill or your sewer bill, we have to demonstrate nexus between what we charge and the costs that are driven by the services we do. So every day that we maintain that sewer system, your water system and all that, those all go to a budget. We cannot charge more than it costs to do that. We can't have a profit. We just went through a big budget presentation Mr. Seha did today, and we got into that a little bit. We are not a non-profit, but we are a not-profit because we're a government. Everything we bring in through your rates, fees, etc., have to be applied to actual costs. Yes?
I have a question for you. The map that you, with the areas that were up there?
Yes, sir.
I know you said you had to look at it and reassess it, but looking at what you have up there, when, hypothetically, the earliest would be sometime late next year,
Yeah.
right?
That we break ground.
Where would you break ground?
Okay, so.
I'm asking because we're dealing with repair, or about to deal with repairs ourselves. So we're gonna get double tapped. We have a sinkhole right now.
Do you mind if I ask you where you live?
Highlands.
Highlands. I get more calls from the Highlands, and that is an important consideration. So here's I'm gonna go back to this. We have that 10-point criteria that said where we should go first. That's now 14 years old. So again, I'm gonna talk to our executive team and say, maybe we need to look at this. I get calls regularly from the Highlands that we have failures up there, and I know why. I used to live up on Amapola, and above Hacienda. And I know my next door neighbor, good old Mario, they lost theirs. And they had one of those deep, 30-foot deep seepage pits, man, that cost them a pile of dough.
He almost fell into ours.
Yeah, well, I wasn't joking. I think it was Flora. A lady was standing there waiting by to her daughter one morning, and she disappeared. And she went into the septic tank, man. So, just saying, it's a stinky business, but it is our bread and butter. No. Okay, so, as far as, I had to get it in there. Anytime you talk about sewer, you gotta get it in there. So how will we do it? So we'll readdress that. But I think Area J, which is a portion of the Highlands, is one of our earliest priority areas, if I'm not mistaken. But we will get that out. So that, you know what, as soon as we get that criteria, if we're going to reestablish or whatever, we'll get that up on the AD 18 webpage for you. And it's good, it's so important if you have other people up in your area, and if you're having septic failures, or you're having to pump more than once every 3 years or so, man, it's important to let us know. Now, what we used to do, we used to gather data from the county. Every month they'd send us pumping logs, and what we had recognized, if they pumped a single address more than once in a year, we said, hey, that's a failing septic system, and we would track that. They don't have those, provide those logs to us anymore. So we're kind of in the dark unless you all communicate with us. Go ahead.
With ours, which I'm not sure if it affected anybody else, the rains.
Oh yes, because your percolation. And the rains overwhelm the ability of your already stressed soil to percolate that wastewater. So yeah, you got a stinky mess there. It's tough. I know. Growing up, we had a failed septic tank in Rancho Mirage, believe it or not. Oh man, family of 6, kids and adults.
Just because I have no idea. So once they're right in front of my house and they're saying, okay, we're gonna turn your water off and here's your pipes going in, how long are we looking at?
Yeah, it wouldn't, okay, so the question is how long are we looking at for the connection process? That wouldn't touch your water, first of all. Your water stays on. This is wastewater. This is, one's going in, one's going out.
Okay.
So on the outbound stuff, it's about a day, usually.
On your side?
Day and a half.
Do I do my abatement ahead of time?
Oh, no, that's your abatement. Now, for us to construct a project in the street, that takes weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks. You'll have a mess out in front of your house, you know, dirt instead of road, slow driving for, you know, could be a month. Yeah, but you get nice pretty streets at the end of it. Yes, here, and then I'll go here.
I have a question. We're house not on the street. You have to access an easement to get back to where we're at. So how does that?
Okay, you have to access it. So are you saying, the question is accessing your septic tank?
You septic, yeah.
Okay. Well, the sewers go be out in the street. So you're one of those lucky people that they're going to have to come around through the side of your house one way or the other and dig it deep enough to get fall.
It's only one way because the other side is just a 100-foot drop.
Yeah, we'd have to look at your specific property. But what part of the engineering process is actually to go out and site check, and they mark where on your property the contractor needs to bring the lateral to make sure you get flow. The opposite of what you're getting right now, by the way. Yes, were you? Somebody else? I saw. Oh, you.
Me, but I forgot what I was going to ask now. You have a senior moment.
I've been having them since I was 12. Yes.
So, if you live on a side street, I live off of Skyline on Elm. There's only one house. Sewer line down Elm.
They will make sure that there is a lateral to your parcel. Yes, whether they bring a line up. Are there other parcels on Elm?
There's a parcel on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they want to develop the 16 or 68 acres that go towards.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's beautiful up there, and that's where all the granite is that you're
Yeah,
sitting on. Yeah, so, yes, they will build, it will be designed to get you and anybody else on that area. And when they build that small development, they'll have to build their own.
Right.
Yeah, there'll be a stub out there waiting for them. More questions? Folks, listen, I get it. A pile of information, big decisions. We're starting early. You have time. Mull it over. You'll be able to go back to the website after April 1st. Review the video. I mean, why wouldn't you want to review the video? Review the video. Get more information. You have my contact information. I can take your call or email. I'll answer the best I can. I'll be very busy, but we'll get to you. Yes, another question.
One quick question regarding the dollars. So basically, it's almost no money out of pocket. The $8,000 or whatever it is going to be on our tax bill, so we pay nothing.
Initially.
Initially, but we have to pay our taxes twice a year.
Sure.
Hopefully, we can still write that stuff off. And then the on-site, that is where you guys have that loan application
We can do
process?
that. So you're thinking cash flow. Yes, very good.
Okay, so basically, what the loan that you guys offer, what is the down payment on that loan or the?
No down payment.
So you could finance the whole 1,800 if it's 1,800?
Spread it over your 10 years, whatever that amortizes out at.
Correction, it is a 10%.
Oh, 10%?
Yes.
Okay, so if it was
Oh, thank you,
$1,800,
Arturo, that's new.
you have to pay $180 on
Correct.
the 18, okay.
That's the only amount you pay now.
And then the rest is amortized.
That's new, that's good to know. So for the camera, there is actually now a down payment on our loan, which is 10%. So, and I don't know when that started, frankly, when we first started that loan program, it wasn't part of it, but that's fine, 10%. So
Thank you.
$180
Thank you.
if we get the low end. For you guys, millions, no, I'm just kidding. We don't know yet. I just know you guys are good guys. I feel for you, I really do. That's a tough one. It's not as bad as the guy whose bedroom was over it, but it's a tough one. Other questions? Listen, what do we got? We got 7:15. You've been great. We appreciate you guys taking the time to come out, get the information. Again, we are available if you have more questions, and we appreciate. Stay in touch. If you're not getting more information down the road, give me a call. But you should continue, or look on the website. It'll continue to tell you what you should have received in the mail. Yes.
So do the notices go out to ratepayers or property owners?
Only property owners.
Okay.
So these notices, everything related to this, not only does it go only to property owners, only property owners that are stakeholders on this specific issue. So all property owners up here don't have a clue what's going on. They've already done it. Yeah.
Just wondering why some people weren't notified.
Yeah. In the case of your close neighbors, again, I just want to reiterate, if we're using county data, it's not always accurate. In some cases, quite inaccurate, especially if it's a newer home. Tell them to call me so we can match up with the APN and make sure we have the right contact information. All right?
Right.
And the website, again, is mswd.org/AD18.